2024 election, you would realize that the rhetoric around this election is really high. The tempo is really high. The NPP have said that they are going to break the 8, and they've said that they are going to be the first political party in this fourth Republican history to be able to do so. A party that will go 2 consecutive terms and win another term afterwards. The NDC have also said that they are winning this election come what may. And recently, the NPP had an event at Kweku. They had a walk, and the Food and Agri Minister made some comments which has generated some conversation. Listen to this brief report, and then when we come back, my guests are set for tonight's Ghana Connect.
The National Youth Organizer of the NDC was the first to take on the Agri Minister for his comment. On a Facebook Live video, Mr. Yamin said the only reason Brian Acheampong is getting away with his comment is because the leader of the NPP, as well as the president of the country, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has set a bad example.
Me as a national organizer, I will not be leading the NDC into the next election only for Brian Acheampong and the NPP to just make useless statements like he has made. And this is not the first time. The first person who made that statement, unfortunately, is coming from the President of the Republic.
Featuring on the probe Sunday, April 9, with Emefa Apawu, MP for Ebuakwa South, Samuel Atachia, said his colleagues' comment have been taken out of context. He wants the public to ignore.
In fact, it's been taken out of context. I was on the stage, actually. There was nothing fiery about it. It was just in context that like you having a good fight, I'll beat you to pulp. If you said that, doesn't mean that you're going to use violence or anything. It's a political language. So I was a bit surprised that people are giving it some violence, undertones and all that. He never, exhibited anything which was of violence in character. So I was surprised, hugely surprised. But I was there listening to what he said. We will not let you come to power. What does it mean?
That they will never hand over to power.
Of course, that means we'll break the 8.
But founding member of the NPP, Dr. Yamoah Paintsil, will not consider the comment lightly. According to him, he cannot sit down unconcerned in the face of such, quote, destructive political statement by some recalcitrant element in the political class. Without doubt, the statement by Brian Acheampong can lead this nation into destruction beyond the extent the Akufo-Addo government has caused, unquote. He noted in a statement he issued. Security analyst Dr. Ishmael Norman has called on the IGP to invite Mr. Brian Acheampong for further questioning. According to him, the comment may have security implications regardless of the intent of the speaker. He spoke on Joy FM's Super Morning Show.
There is a thin line between energizing the political base and weaponizing them. If this kind of talk continues, then Mr. Acheampong himself will be considered to be an unethical political leader, because a leader would adhere to the rule of law.
So this is the context of this conversation that has set tongues wagging and people talking about the level of heated political rhetoric as the nation inches closer to that crucial 2024 election. The comments, as you may now be aware, was received with widespread public condemnation, with some civil societies even calling on President Akufo-Addo to call Brian Acheampong, who is now Minister for Food and Agriculture, to order. The MPP is, however, standing by its MP, insisting there is nothing wrong with the statement and that indeed that was a response to alleged similar comments made by former President John Mahama. You'll recall that the former president had said that the 2024 election will be a do-or-die affair. The NDC's legal directorate, as we know now, have since petitioned the Police Criminal Investigations Department asking it to arrest and prosecute Brian Acheampong. There's a twist. I'll come to that shortly. But John Mahama this week at a campaign stop has been defending the specifics of the comments he made regarding do or die. He has some explanation. Listen.
Edin Jema MPP 40 a umuntimin nano. Eno eni. Menye hubia so. Eso yebodi na bibi ya omo. Enti 2024 abatu a ebetui. Make I say do or die.
As for the name JM, NPP hears it and they can't sleep all of a sudden. I'm not even scary, but still, whenever they hear my name, they get restless. So I said, as for the upcoming 2024 election, it's a do or die affair.
Now do or die, bro. Focus on. I just said, Bibia, yes, so critical. I was so ye Bibia, send everybody obeying Kunimumu. And your friend do or die.
In the English language, do or die means doing all you can to get victory within a given circumstance.
As I said, has Nikoto Kweku Yamoah na final match for the league to end. Na Obakun Edi Bakwenim by 1 point. Some match no last match no. And no na Obi winning a net say we the league no. Some match no betimi aka say as for this football match it's a do or die affair.
So tonight we ask what is resulting in this sudden heightened political climate as the country heads towards the 2024 election, and what does that even signal? Plus, is the police being proactive enough? Are they going after sect talks, or they are only going after what they will call small fishes or persons who aren't that politically significant? And so how can we hold the police to account on such matters? Connecting with me in studio very soon, I'll be joined in studio by Julius Kwame Anthony. He's a student of the law, former General Secretary of the National Union of Ghana Students. Joshua Worship Frimpong is also a law student. He's currently the acting president of the Law Student Association of the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. Emmanuel Kojo Kranten, he likes to call himself Manuel, but he's called Emmanuel actually. He's my colleague here at Joy News, and he's currently pursuing a postgraduate degree in the United Kingdom, Brighton to be specific. He now sports some dreadlock and other things. I'll put those to him. He has some interesting perspective to share on this, and also Divine Edem Knight-Tay also has quite a checkered history in student politics. He was, until recently, General Secretary of the National Union of Ghana Students. He was succeeded by Julius Anthony. He was also the president of Alexander Dumkwapon Hall, JCR, on the University of Ghana campus. So the two gentlemen will join me in studio shortly. But let me start first with my guest on Zoom. Gentlemen. Hello, gentlemen.
Yeah. Bismarck, can you hear me? Good evening.
Yeah, Divine, what name did you just call me?
Bismarck, is that not your name?
No, that's not my name. Right, so, guys, yes. Let me start first with you, Manuel. I mean, you've been doing this for some time, and are you surprised that just about a year and a half to the next election, such heated rhetoric is coming up?
Yeah, good evening. To answer the question bluntly, I am not surprised in the least. In fact, if you check the history and really the literature in the past couple of electoral cycles in Ghana, every penultimate year to an election year, these rhetorics actually, begin to pop up. We can go back to 2019 and then 2020, the same thing happened. In 2015 and 2016, the same thing happened. You can go way back, even up until somewhere in 2000, 2001, the same thing happened. And it's become a trend which really is worrying in the sense that there doesn't seem to be any way to hold these political actors, accountable. And when they are in opposition, they sing one song, as you can hear, and as you did play the John Mahama sound. When they're in opposition, they sing one song. And when they come into power, they do everything to defend themselves. In 2016, when we had a or die be die statement from the current president, Nana Akufo-Addo, his party and his ilk went all out to defend him. And at the time, they were in opposition. You had members of the NDC who at the time in government also in the same fashion come out to condemn. Indeed, large complaints here and there. The same thing is happening in 2023. This time around, the NPP in power and then the NDC at the other side of the aisle. And so I'm not really surprised that it's coming up at this particular point in time. But as we will, delve into much later in the conversation, what does this incident portend for the future of elections in Ghana, and what does it mean for the unsuspecting electorate who only want to go out and queue and then vote, like it happened in Techiman South, like it happened in Ayawaso West Wagon. They only want to go out and cast their ballot. What do some of these volatile statements mean for those people who be going out to vote as we're having this conversation, Kweku?
Right, you are really already sounding like an academic. I see what Brighton is doing to you over there, but we'll come to that shortly. let me go to Divine. Divine, what do you also make of that as preliminary comments? Do you really feel that there is something to be concerned or something to be worried about at this point in time?
Definitely, Kweku, there's really a lot to be concerned about, not just something, but a lot. As Manuel rightly indicated, every year before an election year, and even in election years itself, what we have realized is an increasing spate of very charged up speech by our political actors. And if we do not take care, what it is going to do is that the nation is going to become so polarized such that getting the nation back, getting our political actors back together is going to become very difficult. Now, Kweku, if you look at a lot of places where there's a lot of political polarization that lead to violence, when you look at our African neighbors, it started with political speeches of such nature. And so it is definitely something to be concerned about, because if we want to have a very mature democracy, one that recognizes that losing elections does not mean the end of the world, then we would have to be concerned about this spate of charged up rhetoric of, for want of a better word, violent rhetoric that are political actors. So definitely it is something to be concerned about as my preliminary comments.
Right. So let me then come to you, Julius. There are those who've said that some of these things are mere political campaign talks that do not really mean anything, and going substantive into this conversation with you, because when persons go onto the campaign platform, they see all these people, a sea of people wearing political colors, the tendency to get energized, to make comments. Some have said that they are really nothing, and that in 2024, we'll go into election, everything will be peaceful, we'll go out there, and some of these comments ultimately will not matter. Do you agree?
I don't agree. If a politician mounts a platform and the only way to charge up the crowd is to incite violence and make claims about how they are going to face the opponent on the field as though it was war, then that politician has obviously failed on his mandate on delivering on the fundamental things that the people expect from him, including a good economy, a peaceful environment, good drinking water, and all those things that people expect from that politician. So if the politician's only way of charging people up is to threaten violence and all that, then he has obviously failed. And it is the failure that is pushing especially the incumbent to be doing the things they are doing. If you have all performed and you have no doubt, okay, in the people's support for you, you know that the people are charged up for you, they will renew your mandate, then you have no point worrying about, your opponent or whatever force they are marshalling or whatever. I mean, if you say that it's just comments, we saw the realities on the ground. 2020 election. People were shot and killed in this country in the name of election. What the ordinary Ghanaian wants is to go queue, vote peacefully, and go home. And people go and vote because they are expressing their aspirations, or they are expressing their disappointments in the expectations they have had in the past and they do not get. So if the person wants just this avenue to do that, and then you think that it's a matter of you expressing who can marshal more force than the other, then we are into trouble. And I really think that we need to be measured, and the politicians who do this, they must be repudiated. And the lack of repudiation is the reason why we have someone like Brian Champon go on a platform and make those comments. Is the reason why we have it, because if the events that led up to 2020 election are anything to go by, if the events that led up to the election of Speaker in Parliament are anything to go by, then it means we encourage them to do this in Parliament. No disrespect to Mr. Kaloza Hinkra, but he went, took a ballot paper, almost chewing it, running helter-skelter, but he is on Parliament's disciplinary committee of a sort. You understand what I'm saying? The committee of privileges. He's on that committee. So if a person who does that in the eyes of all Ghanaians. Everybody could see him on the eve of the election of the speaker to be the rabble-rouser in the chamber, took ballot papers, running about, something children shouldn't even do. It's on Parliament's quote and unquote disciplinary committee, because when privileges issues come, when discipline of members and all those things come, they are the people who listen to it. If you allow such a person to serve on that committee, then it speaks of what we are doing as a people. It shows that we are not serious, because there was no punishment for the person for what he did, but he was placed on a committee which is supposed to check the behavior of other people.
But Julius, aren't these two scenarios different? Someone actually did something, and Brother Champon can lay the claim that he was only making a political statement. Indeed, there are those who have sought to justify what he said by saying he laid the context to say that, well, the NPP will actually win the next election. And if they do win, then if you win, you don't have to handle
why are you making a hypothesis of violence and responding to it yourself when the people you are going on the field with, I don't know if there was the need to respond to anything, because if you say he placed it in contest, what contest? If there was something that somebody said, a threat of violence or something, and he says he would even respond, I would make peace with that. There was none. And on your own, you set up a hypothesis and respond. What that betrays is that you are one who is already marshalling some, foul means of going into the election. Probably you are the one preparing to use force or to use violence in the election. And so you're hypothesizing that in the events that the other person does this, it means he already has some intention or have formed some plan to use force in the election, which should not be countenanced. And I am saying that these two scenarios are not necessarily different. The problem is when people do these things, what is our response to it? What do we do to them? We reward them. And that is the problem. If someone could disrupt the election of the Speaker of Parliament and there was no repudiation for it, he was placed on a committee that's supposed to check the discipline of others, then we see these things going on and on and on. And let them be cautious that always in this country, we assume that the people themselves are very peaceful. They are not going to do anything. The politician can do whatever he likes. But I don't think it can continue for long. History does not support that idea. If you keep doing that, there will be a time you, the one who think that you are the one who can marshal force and all those things, the people will come for you. And that is a caution that must go to the politicians who are threatening violence, the ones who mount platform and say that they are going to meet each other on the grounds and all those things. That's the caution that must go to them. If you have failed as a government, your duty now is to be correcting that. Check your figures. Make sure you are delivering on the mandate of the people. Make sure you are curbing their disappointments. You are mitigating their suffering. When you do that, you would have no need to want to use force to lose election. And you see, their behavior betrays a lack of a fundamental understanding on what democracy is about. Democracy is about the people, not you. So if you think it is
just to play a little bit of a devil advocate, really. I mean, politics is about delivering. Governance is about delivering to the people, right? But you don't get to deliver to the people if you are not in government.
Yes, but you have no business being in government. You have no business being in government if the people don't agree with you. There are those who say that
you don't have to put the cart before the horse. So, in this time around, you have to win the election first. If you really think you have superior knowledge about how to govern the people, make their lives better, win the election first.
No, the essence of democracy is that your superior knowledge and your means of delivering should be your means to get into power. Not that you have superior knowledge and for that matter you can use force, and when you get into power then you show us your superior knowledge. Show us your superior knowledge. Someone like Brane Champon, he's already in government. He's a minister of state. His ministry is one of the worst performing in this country. At the most record low, if you check the figures. So if you have the opportunity, it's not even a matter of putting the cart before the horse in his case. His government has been in power for how long? Over 6 years. What do they have to show for it? The worst government in the history of this country. By far. So if you have the opportunity to have shown the people that this is what you can do and they should give you an easy way to power, and you have failed completely, you have no business now trying to use force or threaten force. If he is really delivering, if his government is really delivering, Brian should not have a business worrying about what his opponents say or don't do. He should be very confident in his work over the last 6 years and know that his mandate will be renewed. Not go on a platform and be threatening violence. He shouldn't do that. And nobody will tolerate it. That should be what they should know. That this country is not going to watch.
But that is the point people are making.
This country is not going to watch.
Brian Champon has said something and someone says, well, if you come with 10 cutlasses, we'll come with 20. It's warmongering. But Julius, I'll come to you. I'll come to you again. Then we can delve into that. But Worship has also joined us on phone. Now, worship, I understand you are caught in some traffic on your way here, but it's good that by way of technology you can join us on phone. What are your views on some of the perspectives your colleagues have shared around the table?
Right, Kweku, can you hear me?
I do. I can hear you.
Great. Thank you. Good evening and good evening to our listeners. I have listened generally to the remarks by my colleague, and I think that my comments are not far from what they're saying. Only that, this conversation really centers on the freedom of expression as a fundamental and inalienable right, and the level of the limitations that are constituting phases of the enjoyment of this fundamental right. You understand that even though Article 21 of our 1990 Constitution grants that we are allowed to enjoy this particular right and express our opinions, the Constitution also places some limitations in Article 12 of the 1992 Constitution that this enjoyment to be subject to the freedoms of others and public interest. And we understand generally what public interest will mean, that the general well-being or welfare of the society. And it's suffice to say that if we are making these remarks, if we're expressing our opinions as an enjoyment of this right.
So, worship, I have a little challenge with your phone. It's a bit muffled, your sound. We'll try and fix that, and then we'll get back to you. But guys, let's make this as conversational as possible. You can chip in, so all your microphones will be on. You can join in whenever anyone is making a comment. You can chip in. Let's make Ghana Connect as conversational as possible. For those of you listening, you can also join us via WhatsApp 055 111 997 055 111 997. You can join us on WhatsApp and share your thoughts on this conversation. So, right, let's zoom right into the conversation. Let me start again with you, Manuel. You've heard some of the things Manuel have said about political parties and the tendency to think that, well, you can get to power through certain means and then later implement your ideas. Where do all these warmongering and these talks, if Brian Champon's comments and John Mohammed's do or die comments, even fit that in the first place? And I would also be very interested in knowing what you think about whether or not Brian Champon's comments, if there's anything to go by, is comparable to John Mohammed's do or die comments. And does his explanation make any sense? Does the explanation really change what he's speaking about? I really want to hear your thoughts on that, Mano.
So, Kweku, let me maybe take the issues on a different, a number of levels, right? And then start off by making the point that Brian Champon, in his personal capacity, whether as a member of parliament or as minister of state, does not have a responsibility. In fact, he has no power whatsoever in a determination of whether or not a political party goes ahead to hand over power to the next party that wins elections or not. So in himself, Brian Champon has no business even making this comment. Even if he goes ahead to do as he has done now, his words are as good as nothing.
But Mano,
isn't
the background?
Let me just make the point.
Just a second.
Quickly.
The background of Brian Champon, isn't it interesting? He's recently, until being the
exactly
he was the Minister of
State
at the Interior National Security Ministry. He's alleged to have played some role in Ayawaso West Wogon and other things. You were there around the time. You were doing the morning show on Lake Campus exclusive, and you covered that election. So you know what I'm talking about. Doesn't this come in and makes the statement a little bit even more weightier than an individual on the front of his own?
And if you had allowed me to land, maybe you'd have gotten the import of the.
Well, I won't let you land. You are not a flight.
I'm saying that Brian Champon in his personal capacity does not have any business determining whether or not a party hands over power to the next that is elected. However, and if you had listened to the commentary on this particular matter in the past week, you'd be even more incensed because over the weekend, Samuel Atachia, a leading member of the party, said, "Oh, you know what you're saying right now? Oh, just political talk. It's political statement. Oh, God, he was just, just speaking and charging the base and so on and so forth." On the next Monday, the national organizer of the party, Henry Nana Boakye, goes on national radio and says that, you know what, we endorse it. This is a position of the party, and that is where, for me, it becomes a problem. A party which has been alleged, and this is not just an allegation, this was a whole commission of inquiry that was set up by the president. It, made public hearings and then found that this same individual who we are talking about tonight had a role, a very significant role to have played in the terrible IRSO West Wagon by-election violence and recommended sanctions for him. Kweku, in terms of sanctions, I don't know what sanctions privately he was given, but as a public officer, if he's being sanctioned, I think that you and I deserve to know what sanctions he was giving. We don't know that, but he was moved as Minister of State in charge of National Security at the presidency to the Interior Ministry. And you're wondering that, okay, so is that the punishment? A commission of inquiry sits and says that, you know what, this guy has done something that led to the maiming of innocent electorate. Punish him, and then he's moved from the presidency to another ministry. Is that in itself, to an extent, a subtle endorsement of the actions that the gentleman is alleged to have undertaken? That's a question for me. And then two, and then two, you move on up until now. In fact, we've heard the president, and I will not perhaps penalize the president for having made that statement, because in his situation there was a very important context that he set, that he's looking forward to, in the spirit of breaking the eight, handing over power in 2025 to a new NPP government. Now that precedent had been set. Now Brian Champon goes on stage and says that, you know what, by hook or crook, whatever it takes to maintain power, we are going to do it. But that, it raises eyebrows and it raises questions, given his personal, relationship with violence and, recommendations of reputable commissions of inquiry for him to have been punished. And then I expect that, just like in 2009, Kweku, if you would remember, a similar situation happened after the 2008 election, and the NPP was quite disgruntled, about the win of the former president, may God rest his soul, John Evans Atta Mills. John Kufuor made a very emphatic statement. He said, as for the constitution, it says that when the Electoral Commission declares another person as having won the election, my job as a president, is an incumbent president, as regarding the Presidential Transitions Act, what I'm supposed to do is to hand over power. So if the party NPP thinks that it is peeved and it has problems with the processes, go to court. For me, I am going to hand over power. And that for me was a real show of leadership. Now, this time around, we're not seeing what we saw in 2009.
Yeah, but
with the leader of the
hasn't
party.
come yet.
No. 2025
President
does not
Kufuor's
need to
posture has
come.
at no point in time been like that
does
of
not need to
President
come.
Akufo-Addo and his
It
government.
does not need
It
to
has
come.
never been like that. President
It does not need
Akufo-Addo's
to come.
posture, when it comes to these electoral issues, has always been a subtle endorsement of the violence. In 2020,
Which is really problematic.
In
Which
2020,
is problematic if
the
you
violence
ask
that led to his re-election, what did the president ever say about it? Nothing.
Maybe he just wasn't
Nothing.
seized with enough
That-
facts to be able to make informed
The
comments.
president of the Republic
No,
of
no,
Ghana,
but
having
Kweku,
seen
the-
enough
the
from the
eight-
election that re-elected him, when 8 people died, how preposterous. It means the president is not in charge. So if our president is truly in charge of this country, does not endorse violence of any sort, he should have said something about these comments. Moreover, he spoke about the recommendation of a committee in reference to Mr. Brian Champon. The president just shelved that recommendation and did nothing about it. So this president's posture has never been like that of
Well,
President
to
Kufuor.
be
This
fair
new
to be
patriotic
fair to the
party
president, they
has
issued a
never
white
been
paper.
like that of
They
President
issued a
Kufuor's
white
new
paper on the
patriotic party.
committee, the commission's report, and then accepted some,
Rejected.
and then rejected some.
And rejected the most consequential ones.
Well, maybe
as to whether or not
and they explained why they raised points of law. And
what points of law? On what basis?
What point
On
of
what
law?
basis?
For instance,
That-
they
that-
say, for instance, that when it comes to double and other such persons who were mentioned, for instance, the committee could not really, by an example, for instance, when he appeared before the vetting committee of parliament, those issues came up. And the explanation was that the government, by issuing that white paper, did not find enough reason to believe that the committee or the commission had established some proof against them for them to be able to take that up.
No. This was something that happened in the eyes of everybody. People saw it. And moreover, that oh yes, people saw it, and there are videos. And if there is basis to believe that the people who went there were commissioned by him, what excuse do you have for not following the recommendations of the committee? And the president, if he says that there's no evidence to support what the committee is saying, I don't know what process he undertook to say that there's no evidence to support them. And if he had a process upon himself to have determined whether there's evidence to support the conduct of people, then what was the essence of the committee? So you set up a committee, the committee does its job, then you now come back and tell them that I could have done it better. And there's no evidence to support what you have done. And for that matter, there will be no sanction. Then this person is rewarded. 8 people died in the election that elected you. You say nothing about it. Your party goes about saying that they will use whatever means, after failing the people on the economy and everything, they will use whatever means to retain power. And unlike your predecessor, you would say nothing about this. I mean, the election that handed over power to President Akufo-Addo in 2016, how many people were killed? How many Ghanaians died? 0. The election that ensured his re-election, whether he was actually truly re-elected, I don't know. That election, how many people died? 8. And he said nothing about it. So this is a president who has a subtle endorsement for this kind of violence that goes on. And it should not be tolerated on a
Okay. So Manuel, I want to come back briefly to you in a minute.
Yeah.
Indulge me for a minute. Let me hear Divine. He's been itching to say something. I'm seeing him on the Zoom. I mean, moving his lips. What's the point?
Kweku, I want to take it first from your point about the president not seeing enough reason to as it were, sanction Brian Champon. If the president did not see enough reason to sanction him, why did he move him from the presidency to the Interior Ministry as a form of demotion, so to speak? It meant that they recognized that something bad had happened and that this was the level of punishment they were going to give him. But we are saying that level of punishment is not enough because he was still, number one, a member of the government. Number two, he was still responsible for certain parts of our security architecture, which he himself, by ordering the brutalities at Ayawaso West, had breached. And so it goes back to what Manuel and Julius were saying, that this is a precedent that continuously to subtly endorse the violent actions and violent and of people of his party. And so if you want to ease tensions, if you want to ease tensions in the country, if you want to prevent politicians from issuing violent rhetoric, then we have to start from the person who is the leader of the country and who is the commander-in-chief of our Ghana Armed Forces and who ultimately is responsible for the security of the state. This man is also responsible. The president is also responsible, Bismarck, for easing tensions. And so, yes, and so if the same president is simply endorsing the violent actions of people that have been entrusted with the security of the state, then, I mean, I don't know why we can turn around and blame others who follow suit. Because they see that, I mean, our president is leading the way. So ultimately, the responsibility for responsible political talk lays first with the president, second with the ruling party, because as a party that has formed the government, if anything is to go wrong in the country, then you have some responsibility to take for that.
To take for that, right?
Yes, so, because you bet the government,
right? So, Worship, I'll come to you shortly on what you say about this attempt. And I mean, before this conversation, I don't really thought about President Akufo-Addo and what he can say or cannot say, because while some of those things may mean much, I had not paid much attention. So I'll come to you on that and what your expectation of the president is. And if these claims that because the president has not spoken about this, the social endorsement is anything to go by. But Manuel, you were making some points before Julius and Divine rabbled, rousing their way to.
Kweku, I want us to move away from this conversation of subtle endorsement, because on Joy FM Super Morning Show on Monday, Easter Monday, the national organizer of the NPP said this is the position of the party. This is not a subtle endorsement. This is a de facto
actual endorsement.
And an actual endorsement by the political party which is currently forming the government. And so let us move away from this, a subtle, latent endorsement. It is not subtle, it is not latent. Until, for instance, the president comes to say, okay, this is not what he intended to say, this is what we are saying. I think that's the position of the national organizer supersedes any of those. Now, moving on. You see, I don't want us to make it an MPP or a government in power conversation, because as recent as the 2020 election, a media monitoring report, commissioned by the Media Foundation for West Africa, found 582, Kweku Asante, 582 instances of irresponsible commentary on our radio television platforms in Ghana. They monitored 60 for 6 months. Now, out of these 582, a whopping 218 of them were found to have been made by the NPP, and the NDC followed with 135. The party that came, closest to the two of them was the UFP with paltry 26. I'm not saying that it's good to have 26 incidents of irresponsible commentary, but you can look at the gap. And so it is neither, just an NPP conversation or just an NDC conversation. The two leading political parties in the country have connived, and indeed they have, committed themselves to, as it were, irresponsible talk. And you can take away President Akufo-Addo's all die, be die conversation. You can take away Brian Champons, we will not hand over. John Mahama himself on this campaign. And we've heard him say, well, the NDC is a party that was formed from, revolution. And if it comes to violence and mayhem, you can't unleash more than us. It is not a competition of who can unleash more violence than who. And for me, when I sit down as a potential, voter, and then I think that, okay, the NPP, for instance, at this point, with all of the economic indicators, is not doing anything proper. And so, hypothetically, I want to vote for an alternative. And then I listen to the news and I hear the biggest voice or the leading voice of the alternative tell me, we can also unleash violence, and so nobody should think that they have a monopoly over. I'm disappointed.
I think Divine and Antoli, I think they conveniently ignored this point, because there's a point Mahama has made about the NDC having revolutionary roots and their ability to unleash violence, and so that kind of thing. I think Julius was making a little point about Akufo-Addo.
Exactly.
But I'll come to you. Let me not finish, and you can.
But we'll come to that later, Julius.
Let me just land. Yes, I am disappointed when I hear some of these things from the main, at this point, maybe the leader of the opposition party into the last election, because they're going to have, primaries. And so it is not just NPP or it's just NDC. And you may sit in the studios at Kokumlemle and think that, it's just political talk and whatever. But listen, in the United States of America, the January 6th insurrection that, had, and the United States of America is one of the biggest democracies that you can have in the world. And you can think that these people are more enlightened, these people are not as gullible, and so on and so forth, as all the things that you say. No disrespect to anybody in Ghana. But Donald Trump, and we know all of his populist concerns and conversations. I'll quote one of the things he says. He says, we fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you...
Did the Home Office just block Manuel's Zoom? That's why he's gone off a little bit. But Julius, I was making some point.
Now, when you...
I was making some point. Manuel's Zoom seemed to have gone a little bit. We'll try and fix that. But briefly, it's Worship. Are you there with me?
I'm here, Kweku.
Exactly. Your network is much better now. What do you say about this attempt? And Julius has what maybe in courtroom they'll say he has led evidence to seeking to crucify the president, and alleging that the president may be endorsing all this. I mean, is that really founded? Really, what do you think?
Julius takes a very strong stance against the president, and those, of course, may be deductive reasoning, given the fact that the statements from the incumbent Minister of Agriculture is a member of the ruling party, and the party has also taken a position in affirmation of those statements. I think maybe those are his reasons for saying, but I don't generally think that the president is corroborating the statements of Brian Champon. Only that, in the absence of his response, we may have to view that his silence is in support of, the statements that were made by Brian. But I generally wouldn't want to strictly say that the president is in support of Brian. But I'm very much worried that there has not been any response from him directly, given that this particular issue has the capacity to threaten the peace and safety that we enjoy as a country, and we have long been sustaining. That those are my points. But Kweku, these these issues are rather sensitive. And I have heard some people argue it on the ground of freedom of expression and, the level of political tolerance that we enjoy as a country. But could you remember that even though Article 21 of the 1990 Constitution guarantees the enjoyment of freedom of right, it places certain limitations in Article 12.2 that the enjoyment of these rights are subject to the freedoms of others and public interest, where public interest would mean that the general well-being and welfare of the society. Again, we have further gone legislatively to enact the Criminal and Offence Act, of which Part 4, Chapter 3 talks about offence against peace, talking about certain statements that have the capacity to incite chaos and incite riots. And so we would really want to drift and move away from the conversation of, people just making them behind the back of political parties to understanding that these statements really have the capacity to threaten our state, our peace, jeopardize the long, democracy that we have been enjoying, and ensuring that the institutions that have been granted the power and the mandate to prosecute such persons will take effect. And it brings me back again to the point that, even though Article 88 says that the Attorney General is the one responsible to prosecute such persons, the personalities involved in these situations are of high profile. And so should Attorney General be going after the chairman of the opposition party because of certain comments that, according to their discretion and interpretation, may carry
it
the
has
party
already happened.
chaos.
Worship, it has already happened. It has already happened. The former chairman of the NDC, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, was
put before court for
it has already happened.
specific comments.
It has already happened.
He's not standing trial, actually.
Exactly, and I'm saying of course, he was put before court. So it's not a matter of whether it can happen or it cannot happen. Where there is a will and where there's a political will, it will happen. And just to back up your point,
tell the lady to leave your door. Your door is it's opening. So
Kweku Yamoah. And just to buttress Worship's point on, the potential this has on our national security and stuff. I was making a point about the United States of America, Donald Trump's comments, and then the January 6th insurrection.
Do so for 2 minutes.
And there's a proverb in Akan that they say that se unim uwa shena. Yeah? That if you don't know how it feels like, and if you don't know how irresponsible talk and chapter can impact on national security in Ghana, take an example of one of the biggest economies and really democracies in the world, the United States of America. Its president, now former president, making such incendiary comments, which eventually incited people to go to the Capitol, riots, and then the rest is history. I mean, in that instance, is that what we are looking forward to having in Ghana, where political party supporters will go to Parliament, will go to the Supreme Court, will go to the Jubilee House and besiege the premises? And let nobody deceive you that, this has no impact on people. Listen, in 2020, when I covered the 2020 elections for Joy News, there was a press conference that was organized, and I'll just end my point quickly on this.
You covered the 2024 for Joy News as well, right?
For Kweku, focus, stay on the matter. There was a press conference that was organized by the Greater Accra NDC party. At the time, the chairman was Chairman Adekoka. Now, I covered that press conference. I had a one-on-one interview with Chairman Adekoka. While we were having this rather heated interview, there were supporters outside of his office who were shouting, these people. And at the time, you remember, Joy FM, Joy News, and the election headquarters had projected President Akufo-Addo as being re-elected.
Evans Mensah had done that and put you in trouble at the NDC headquarters. Wow.
and the party supporters had been fed with the notion by the leaders of the party that, we have won the election and it has been stolen. And the media is in a cahoot with the party in power to make sure that we are deprived of our legitimacy in the presidency. This was what was festering. In fact, there were the NDC supporters were massing up at the EC's headquarters at Rage. And I asked Chairman Adekoka that, why are you sitting here and why are you not, for instance, on the streets with the people that you are asking to go on the street? He could not answer. In the end, I had to take Chairman Adekoka himself to hold my hand and walk me out of his office together with my cameraman into my private vehicle to move to the Joy News offices, because the crowd that was gathering outside of the Greater Accra Regional headquarters of the party were becoming, very, very charged, and they wanted to beat us and so on and so forth. And that is the implication of irresponsible chatter. That is the implication of unguarded, and if you like, okromaf, as somebody, the Major General Doe would like to say.
Definitely.
If you do that, these are the implications. Exactly. And I don't think that
because in 2012, when President Akufo-Addo rejected the results of, as announced by the then chairman of the Electoral Commission, I vividly remember that there was this mass up of party supporters at the Obra Sport at Circle at the time, where MPP leaders were making very charged up statements. And then similarly, they said that journalists were in cahoots with the EC to project then President John Mahama as the winner, even though candidate Akufo-Addo had won. And a similar situation happened where journalists were actually brutally beaten. I think someone even nearly lost his eye. One of the journalists even nearly lost his eye. So it's really a cause for concern. If we want to build the kind of country we want, if we pride ourselves as the biggest democracy in Africa, we are always happy whenever we are called by Westerners as Democrats. But really, some of our actions do not portray that we are Democrats. You get it. And so, as Manuel is saying, we our political actors have to look at it, and then. But really, as Worship was saying, it's also a matter of speech. So where do we draw the line between free speech and irresponsible talk? So it's one of those things.
It's a balancing act.
The institutions.
Which institution, Mano? Which institution?
For instance, Kweku Asante, we know that a youth organizer, constituency youth organizer of the NDC in the Ashanti region is currently standing trial for having made very.
But he was more categorical, really. He wasn't talking about.
But let me land, Kweku. You like to jump into conclusion. Let me land. Yeah. He was quite categorical. Yes, and he's currently
that may be termed criminal speech
in itself. Yes, but when people have raised such concerns, and you cannot leave the resolution of these matters in the hands of political parties, because as I've demonstrated to you, when the NDC is in power, they do the same thing. When the MPP is in power, they do the same thing. That is where the police comes in.
But Manuel, if we cannot rely on the political parties themselves to moderate their speech, then really, because the political parties come into government and form the superstructure of the state. So if at the political party level, we cannot depend on their leaders to moderate their speech, then really, what do we want as a nation? Because I do not see how the institutions of state,
right. So you
by the political parties that come into government.
Okay.
Yeah, Kweku, you were saying.
Yeah. I put some question to Julius about he sort of ignoring what John Mahama had said, and I want to come to him briefly on that. But I want to hear from Worship. But I'll come to Julius. You have to explain why you conveniently left out the revolutionary Mahama comments. So be on standby. Worship.
Okay, I mean, I was saying that I think you're placing too much value on particularization of speech in such an instance. The issue really is that you may never know to the extent a particular statement may incite chaos, whether or not it is particularized or it is categorized, whether or not it is very specific or it is not specific. Because the people who will take these words and act on them would not need certain strict reasons to act on them. They would just need the basis of the personality of the individual in question and will act on them. And I'm very much particular about their words because, it has a way of not just about jeopardizing the peace we enjoy, but also, giving us a reflection of our history as a people. Because you remember in the 31st December case, when the apex court of the land at the time outlawed the view of the celebration of the coup d'etat, Adabe JSC made a very profound statement, and he says that given that we have all of the people resolved to accept this constitution, it means that we have decided to do away with the ills of dictatorship. And so if an individual would say that regardless of the outcome or regardless of the situation, we as a party are not willing to hand over power, and another person would also say that this is a do and die affair, and that we will also resist any such instances, then I don't think that we should even make it an issue of which party made a lesser.
Exactly. And that's actually where Julius should be coming in. And this is where Julius should be coming in to be explaining why he left out those comments by former President John Mahama.
Here's the point. I do not think that the comments by the ex-president should be countenanced.
Even before Julius comes in, let me say this.
It's not one that is acceptable, given the fact that the revolution he was referring to, the outcome of it was not one that was desirable for some people in this country. And if we have decided to move away from that, I don't think that any of us should be tracing anything to that kind of revolution. However, my reason for majoring on the incumbent president is this. Within the period from 2016, when he took over power, and I emphasize that the 2016 election, which gave him power, how many people were killed for him to become president? None. But for him to retain power, 8 people were killed. And he said nothing about it. Kweku, that is my problem. It is not a matter of who said what more than the other. It is a matter of the lives we are losing and under the presidency of President Akufo-Addo. And he seems to say nothing about it. And it is
no, but Julius, I frankly disagree.
Others are even incited.
Indeed, if indeed you have the freedom to go after the president that he has not responded to these instances. But the discussion we are having currently has started because 2 personalities, high-profile personalities of the 2 biggest parties in the country, have made certain statements that have the probability to bring about the same killings that you are worried about. And so your stance should not even be, segregated to a particular side. That's the stance we are having against this particular instance, because we want it to be generally addressed. I don't think that if we absorb the statements of Brian, the statement by Mahama is not enough to cause chaos. But it is enough, it is equal and has the same weight to cause the same, issue that Brian's statement would cause.
Worship.
And if we are being aware, Brian's statement was being informed.
That's divine.
The incumbent has the constitutional responsibility to protect the lives of the citizens of this country. And so if state security forces who are under his command brutally assault citizens, maim citizens, kill 8 citizens, and he doesn't speak about it, then the indication that gives to people is that
he endorses it.
We can get red security forces to kill people, and then nothing is going to happen. That really,
I understand your point. I understand your point, Ivan. And
gentlemen, a minute. So we are almost out of time. I have just a little over 3 minutes, really. So I want to do one last round, and you tell me what you think the police should be doing. All right? Should they be taking these things head on? For instance, these petitions that have gone for the arrest and prosecution of John Mahama, what should the police do with it? Can they arrest John Mahama within this period? Can they arrest Brian Champon now? Julius, let me start with you.
Well, I see the whole petition thing as a political gymnastics that they are playing. Because Brian made a comment recently and the public, is on his case and talking about him. We must quickly bring John Mahama back into the conversation as a way of diluting the Brian situation. So it's a political display that they are making, which is not going to materialize into anything. So I don't even place any much value on that. But the police themselves, they have a duty to look at the situation. The question is whether or not they would be able to even prosecute people.
So some have said that they've not seen anything around the 8 people who died at the Chiman. So maybe
they have. Everybody saw people being shot. The videos are there.
But what I'm saying is that they are saying that the police haven't taken my decision.
Of course, that's I'm coming to that. So I'm saying that the petitions and all those things are political things. They are not going to materialize into anything. But the real issues are there. The issues of people being killed are there. The people who shot the guns are the people. What happened to them? So the police should go after those issues. When we see MPs in the chamber taking ballot papers and running, and chewing them. There should be repudiation for that. When politicians mount platforms and make threatening comments, there should be repudiation for that. Not that you wait, then each politician comes, says they have brought petition to you. Those petition things, they wouldn't go anywhere. Anything. The police should take real action on the real issues, and let's move forward.
Right. Worship, 15 seconds. I wanted to be like Songo, I give you 2 seconds, but I think 15 seconds will be enough. What do you think the police should be doing? 15 seconds.
Kweku, are you talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you, and I'm giving you 15 seconds. So tell me what you think the police should be doing. I wanted to be like Songo and give you 2 seconds, but I think 15 seconds is generous.
I'll take that. Well, you know that the law makes it clear that prosecution is at the behest of the Attorney General. Nonetheless, there are other agencies that could invoke the power of the police. For example, individuals can lodge a complaint before the district court for someone, a warrant to be issued, and the police will be under duty to execute it. But for me, the key point really is that we need to balance the harmony of the state as against the edge to arrest and prosecute in such instances because of the personalities involved. And whether or not
are we saying that personalities can say whatever they want and not get any consequence? I think that is something we should be concerned about. But Worship, thank you very much. Manuel, 1 second. If you're able to tell me anything within a second as to what you want the police to do, your 1 second is actually up already. So guys, this is how we end the show today on Ghana. I gave you a second. You could not say anything in the 1 second to be able to make that point. So
at least to close us. That's as we have the peace accords that we sign. I don't think that really the police has to go around arresting people. They have no business deciding for people what they should say. I think it's a matter of free speech. But as you have the peace accord in the 2020 elections, let political parties themselves commit to regulating peace. Really, the people in power, it goes to their benefit. Otherwise, if there's a coup d'etat, for instance, the military will say, "Oh, surrender your power."
Talking about coup d'etat, and you just did a coup d'etat of the host. I gave you a second. You've gone for 10 seconds. But guys, this is how we end the show. We've had a very interesting, a very beautiful conversation about these political rhetoric and what will happen going into 2024 if these are not checked. Worship, you gave us fantastic legal perspectives to this. No wonder you are the LSU president at GIMPA. I'm told Julius is also eyeing a similar something at University of Ghana. We'll talk about that later. But Julius is also a former general secretary at Nooks. He also was he's actually still a law student. And then my colleague Manuel Krantin joined us from the United Kingdom to share some perspective with us. He's looking really fresh. I think I need to get some visa and go to UK some. And then Divine Edem Knight-Tay also joined us today. So the local room is up next with the lads. My name is Kweku Asante. Next week, hopefully Evans will be back, or I'll be back here for another exciting edition of Ghana Connect.